resources everywhere. We're live at the University of Mary today, coming to you live and direct from the Harold Schaefer Leadership Center. I'm looking at a marvelous view off my shoulder here that's fantastic, and one of the individuals that's very passionate about this school, about the Harold Schaefer Leadership Center, been very instrumental in it. Here's our friend Kevin Cramer, who is the Public Service Commission member, a Public Service Commissioner, one of three in North Dakota. I wanted to visit a little bit about some of the news about President Obama's EPA. It's been in the news of late. Kevin, nice to see you as always.
Scott, it's good to see you, and welcome on behalf of the University of Mary Board of Trustees and the supporters and friends of the University of Mary. Always great to have you on our campus and, looking out over this spectacular view.
It is spectacular. It's fun to get here because it's good for the soul.
In fact, when I make the drive out here and I sit here with you in the Harold Schaefer Leadership Center boardroom and look out, I think, why do I go back to the Capitol except that I have a job to do?
And a pretty good view from your office.
It's pretty good. I can see this building from my office, and if I had really good binoculars, I probably could look right into my office from here.
It is quite the view, no question about it. And we should give a little plug for the Harold Schaefer Leadership Center, named after an icon of leadership in North Dakota, without question. But what's the vision of the Harold Schaefer Leadership Center?
Well, the vision of the Harold Schaefer Leadership Center, and the reason the Harold lent his name to this leadership center was really there was a noticeable gap when. Back in the 90s, I guess, when we started all of this, and I was the Director of Economic Development and Finance. Ed Schaefer, of course, was the governor. And Ed had organized a leadership seminar, actually, or a leadership summit at the Bismarck Civic Center, and there was a lot of talk about a gap in leadership, especially in a lot of our rural communities, that there wasn't the type of training and mentoring that was necessary to really move some of these communities forward. The other thing was that there was a real noticeable gap, as testified to by a number of employers in the state, between college graduation and preparedness for the workplace. And we really thought that there was an opportunity there to fill that need, and it fit, of course, the mission of the Sisters of the Annunciation, who founded and are the sponsors of the University of Mary. And so we created the Harold Schaefer Leadership Center, asked Harold to lend us his name, because we really felt like he was the model that we were after. While Jesus Christ is the servant model that we aspire to and hope our students aspire to in terms of their leadership style, Harold was the contemporary, if you will, model of an entrepreneur who was also a citizen, and understood that good entrepreneurship requires good citizenship, and that generosity and giving back was an important part also of receiving. And so we still champion that to this day as part of not only the Harold Schaefer Leadership Center, but the Gary Tharaldson School of Business here on campus, and then the entire campus, which we call America's Leadership University.
And you have a great new leader who we're going to chat with later in the program, and Father Jim Shea, the president of the University of Mary. Quite an extraordinary story when you think about his youth. And here he is leading a university as president, but also the fact that he's become very well known, certainly nationally, in Catholic education circles, and literally comes from humble beginnings as a parish priest.
Not only, if you think being a parish priest is humble beginnings, he really started out as milking cows, near Hazelton on the family milking operation farm near Hazelton. So he's one of us. I always think it's fantastic when you can find a North Dakotan who's educated here, and certainly Father Shea went on to much higher levels of education outside of North Dakota and outside of even the country, because of course he went to Rome. But he brings that understanding, that cultural understanding of the prairie and of the people and of the land, and is a real citizen of North Dakota from birth, and then brings this extraordinary energy and extraordinary intellect and creativity to this job. But he is, as you said, he's youthful. I mean, he is now a 2-year veteran at the ripe age of 36 of being still the youngest college president in the country of this dynamic place that is growing quickly, that is meeting the growing demands of education in our region, and we expect much bigger and better things. And I know Jim will talk about some of those things when you have him on.
Looking forward to it. Want to talk a little bit about some of the things in the news since we've last chatted. President Obama came out, and maybe you heard your speech at the State of Energy Summit, which, by the way, is online now at the stateofenergy.com. The Fargo-Moorhead West Fargo Chamber of Commerce hosting several weeks ago a State of Energy Summit, bringing folks from every sector of North Dakota's energy economy to the stage for members in Fargo, and the comment you made that was met with a lot of support from the audience and from the panel was if President Obama is serious about job creation and serious about trying to turn this economy around, one of the first things he could do would be to ask his EPA Administrator Lisa Jackson to step down. And interestingly enough, last week brought a decision by the Obama administration to temper its EPA on ozone regulations. You see that as a victory? Is that a good thing? Is it window dressing? Is it a political move? Or is it a recognition of their policies being flawed?
Yes. It's a funny thing about politics. Sometimes it actually works. The beautiful thing about an election every few years is it forces leaders to sort of acquiesce a little bit more to the will of the people, and that's the way democracy is supposed to be. It's one step. Frankly, I was a bit surprised. I shouldn't have been, but the whole ozone thing, while I know that's a big issue, we deal so much more with NOx and SOx, as we call them, mercury emissions, and of course greenhouse gas emissions rules now, and the regional haze rules, coal ash rules. There's a number of EPA rulemaking in the process that we monitor. Ozone is certainly one of them, but when he came out and sort of put the kibosh to the ozone rules that were, by the way, proposed and implemented by Lisa Jackson, the EPA administrator, it created quite a firestorm. It's a very small thing. It's one. I would love for him in tomorrow's speech on jobs creation to announce more. I think it would be good certainly be good for energy. It would be good for the economy. I think it does send that signal, if you will, that I talked about at the summit in Fargo, to the investment community. Hey, I'm serious. I hear you. I hear what you're saying. I hear you, business. I don't want to be the anti-business president any longer. I'm sorry that I have been. But it has to be convincing. Otherwise, it is, as you said, window dressing. It can be pandering. If it's not viewed as serious movement, it's just further uncertainty.
The reason I call it window dressing is because really it's a delay. It's simply saying, hey, we're not going to implement this right now. We're going to slow down the review. We're going to sort of put this on the shelf for a while. It isn't saying we had a bad idea and we've rethought this, right?
Well, that's right. Ironically or coincidentally, he's delaying it till after the election, till 2013. But delay is not unimportant either, Scott, because not everything that the EPA proposes is bad. Not, cleaning up the area is not a bad thing. It's when they propose so much so fast that they make it literally impossible for industry to invest in the technology to catch up, or perhaps the technology doesn't even exist, as is the case with, the real big issue right now in North Dakota with the EPA are these two plants, the Leland Olds and the Milton R. Young plant, where the EPA wants to take over the state regulation,
and that's related to this regional haze issue. But they've not done anything in the way of a proposed change there, right?
They have not, but that'd be a good signal to send tomorrow night.
We'll talk about that when we come back. Kevin Cramer with us, North Dakota Public Service Commissioner, reacting to the Obama administration decisions on the EPA of late. More after this on the Common Sense Club and the Scott Hannon Show. Don't go away. Back on the Common Sense Club and the Scott Hannon Show, Kevin Cramer, North Dakota Public Service Commission member with us. We're talking about the recent decision of the Obama administration to back off its EPA on ozone. You mentioned, the regulations on regional haze, and there's so many others as well that are there. Regional haze ultimately going to go to court to be settled?
I would think so, unless they would back off for some reason. Certainly, the health department, the attorney general they're prepared to go to court. Basically, what the EPA has said is that, hey, we don't agree with the way the North Dakota Department of Health is managing or regulating these two power plants through what's called a SIP, or a state implementation plan. They don't agree with it. And the reason they don't agree with it, I don't know the reasons they don't agree with it, but what they don't agree on is the technology that they want to use. The state health department wants to utilize the technology that has proven that it works and that is commercially available for dealing with lignite coal, which is what we have in North Dakota. The EPA says, no, we want you to use this other technology, which is not proven, which has not been tested on lignite coal, and it costs a lot more money. So we're going to spend a lot more money on uncertainty than less money on certainty.
Wouldn't it probably fit the MO of then candidate Obama, who said, our goal is to bankrupt coal companies and have electricity rates necessarily skyrocket?
It certainly seems to fit that goal, and it's unfortunate that the strategy remains in place. But
here's my big question. Is there an air pollution problem in North Dakota?
Well, first First of all, I always think forgive me for laughing, but I always think it is ironic that two of the counties in this country that receive an A rating from the American Lung Association are Mercer and Oliver counties, home to 5 power plants and 3 major coal mines. Clearly, there is not. We are one of, I think it's now down to 10 states in this country who meet all ambient air quality standards as prescribed by the EPA. We do not have an air pollution problem. That's not to say that we don't want to guard against it, but I think we do it pretty darn well in North Dakota.
Yeah, so isn't it, a prime example that the state's doing its job, right? I mean, the regulation is working.
It is, and for the life of me, not only are we in a financial crisis, we are in a spending crisis in this country. Why would we take on more burden for the federal government when the state government out here in North Dakota that has a surplus, I might remind folks, is already doing as good or better job than the federal government could do anyway. It's all so ironic, not to mention what the EPA is pushing is further uncertainty. And what scares me more than the uncertainty is the certainty that they aspire to that is killing jobs and during a major economic crisis in our country.
The story today that's out there is again on this regional haze rule and the difference of how best to regulate it between the state officials, as you talk about how they're doing it, and ultimately the federal government. Yep. But the premise is that we need to reduce air pollution in the Theodore Roosevelt National Park. And my question is, do we? I mean, is for instance in the Teddy Roosevelt National Park, do you go there and say, gosh, we've got a problem here? That seems to be the push. And what I dislike is this: we start from the premise that there's an air pollution problem, and I don't think we have one.
That is the premise. That is a faulty premise. But we're crazier than that, Scott. Let's consider for a moment where Theodore Roosevelt National Park is in proximity to these power plants that they want to regulate. It is straight west and a fair distance west of coal country. As any wind developer can tell you, and if anybody drives around and sees the 1,500 megawatts of installed wind capacity in North Dakota, which ranks us in the top 10 in the country, and frankly one of only 4 states that meet more than 10% of our own energy development or electricity production with wind, you'll notice that they are all set up to take advantage of the predominant wind, which comes from the northwest in North Dakota. So the predominant winds in this state blow these emissions away from Theodore Roosevelt National Park, not toward them. So it's Theodore Roosevelt National Park because it's a national park and because it is precious and because it bears that important conservationist name, becomes sort of an icon, if you will, for a lot of well-meaning conservation and environmentalist organizations. But the reality is that no, we do not have a pollution problem, an air pollution problem at Theodore Roosevelt National Park.
By the way, might the baby steps of the Obama administration for political reasons or whatever, ultimately throwing the EPA under the bus and delaying the smog rules, not, as you say, the haze rules or any of the other myriad of things that are going to cost jobs and cost regulation and slow the economy, but might just this one little sliver be enough to bring your suggestion to the Obama administration on its EPA head to reality? Well,
it's interesting that you asked that question because while the president still maintains strong support for Lisa Jackson, and he did that, frankly, in announcing this squashing, if you will, of these ozone restrictions, at the same time, it certainly illustrates a lack of influence by Lisa Jackson, which is an encouraging thing at this point because she is not pleased, of course, nor are her other supporters. Certainly the organizations like the American Lung Association, the Sierra Club, other environmentalist groups are very upset, even with this one baby step, which creates quite a dilemma for the president because if he's going to do sort of symbolic things like this that irritate his base, what little of his base he has left, because as you know, labor unions, and I know you're going to talk later about this Keystone XL pipeline. That's a classic example of labor unions versus environmentalists. These are two strong, generally Democrat liberal factions that are at odds now with each other over jobs creation versus environmental protection. And so you've got a dilemma here where the president can take the baby steps, but if he only takes baby steps and they're seen largely as symbolic, he'll do no good for the economy. He does not help business organizations come his way, and all he really does is irritates the left. So leadership's tough business, Scott.
By the way, Mitt Romney's working on a few of his economic policies, and supposedly we're getting a sense of his plan on energy. And the headline is that he wants to use U.S. oil and coal to the fullest extent. and make this, a big part of obviously his campaign. And you got Rick Perry in Texas, obviously some similar views, and Michelle Bachmann is about as bully as you can get. There's the top three right now on domestic energy production and the game changer it can be. It's a pretty good sign that energy is playing the role it is in the national debate right now.
Well, energy is perfectly positioned to play that role because we have this failing economy, and energy represents all the opportunities for saving the economy, but it also presents the long-term opportunity for providing low-cost energy for all of business and all of the families in this country. I'd say of those three that you speak of, while I very much appreciate what Mitt Romney's talking about, Rick Perry has probably the better track record. He is the guy that's proven, especially in the area of oil development, that he's got what it takes and that he's lived what he's preaching and has actually done it.
He has a USA Today column that he put out. I don't know if you saw this, but listing wider energy development as a key plank in the economic strategy he intends to unveil in detail, which he'll do as part of this campaign. I think he might have even done it yesterday.
He did talk about oil, I know, yesterday, at least, drilling more oil.
Saying, quote, the Obama administration has severely restricted domestic energy production. I'll ensure we utilize to the fullest extent our nation's nuclear know-how and immense reserves in oil, gas, and coal. By rationalizing and streamlining regulation, we'll harness these resources everywhere it can be done safely, taking into account local concerns. A huge number of jobs are at stake. So, too, is the price of energy, which strongly influences economic growth. We are an energy-rich country that, thanks to environmental extremism, has chosen to live like an energy-poor country. That has to end.
Well, I don't think you could say it any better, except maybe what I would say is, well, let's just turn over North Dakota's energy policies to the country, and we could save lots of bureaucratic red tape and political pain.
It's working.
It's working here, baby. Let's do it this way everywhere.
And somebody that was ahead of the curve big time and remains one of our state's energy experts, Kevin Cramer, North Dakota Public Service Commission member. Thank you, sir.
Great to be with you, Scotty.
More from the University of Mary. Christine O'Donnell, Tea Party darling, author of Troublemaker, coming up. Don't go away.